So in the last video, I talked about rising signs, and if you remember, a rising sign changes every 2 hours or so, and the rising sign is different on different places on planet Earth. So if somebody wanted to know your sign and said, hey, when are you born? And you told them, oh, I'm born on June 8th. Most people, the majority of humanity, would not be able to calculate in their head at that location on planet Earth, at that time of your birth, what sign was rising on the eastern horizon. You would need a computer or some kind of calculation to do that. But most Westerners that are fans of Western astrology, they talk about a sun sign. And so when they ask you, when were you born? You say, oh, I'm born on June 8th. They'll say, oh, you must be a Gemini. And the reason they say that is in Western astrology, they believe that from May 21st to June 21st, the sign, the zodiac sign, is Gemini. But what does that mean? What does Gemini as a sign mean? So imagine you're born on June 8th, and this is the planet Earth, the surface of the planet Earth. And where you are, let's say you are a baby inside a hospital, right? You're born there. At that moment of your birth, you could divide the sky up, starting with what I called your rising sign. So if you go all the way to the eastern horizon, on the east, this is the rising sign. And like I said before, that means there's a constellation of stars way out here in the east, a constellation of stars that makes your rising sign. The sky gets divided up into basically 12 sections. So it may not be exactly 12. The sky is divided in 12 sections, and each of these sections has one of those zodiac signs, one of those zodiac constellations, sort of ruling over or seeing over that particular section of sky. So let's say when you were born, let's say you're born in the middle of the day, directly overhead was the constellation of Gemini. So when you were born, overhead was constellation of Gemini. And because it was the middle of the day, the sun was overhead. So let's say this is the sun. The sun is here overhead from the spot where you're born. Now, wherever on Earth you are, as the Earth rotates and the sky appears to move relative to Earth, that Gemini always stays sort of relative to Earth in the same place for that whole month. The sun always is in Gemini. So they're saying when you're born, if you looked in the sky beyond the sun, and if you could see during the daylight beyond the sun, you would see the constellation of Gemini. So they call that a Gemini sun sign, i.e. your sun is in Gemini, your zodiac sign is Gemini, you're a Gemini sign. And they say that's good for May 21st to June 21st, if you're in that June 8th. Now the challenge is in the Western astrology, it doesn't align with astronomical calculations. Because on June 8th, the sun is actually not in Gemini. By astronomy, the backdrop constellation behind the sun is actually Taurus. I'll get into more detail on that in a later video, but that is part of the reason why astrology has a bit of a bad reputation, because the calculation in Western astrology is not aligned with the sky. In Vedic astrology, it's aligned with astronomy. So then people also ask, what is a moon sign? So imagine you're born here, the sun is in Gemini, and let's say it's the middle of the night, middle of the day, so the moon is down here. So let's say this is the moon, right? If the moon was down here, and you looked at the constellation past the moon, let's say that was Aquarius. Then somebody would say, oh, your moon sign is Aquarius. Now for Western astrologers, it's easy. You ask, when were you born? You know the birth date. If it falls in that particular time, they say, oh, this is your sun sign. This is your sign, right? Moon sign, a little bit more complicated. You have to get to the day. Rising sign, much more challenging. You need a calculator to do that.